If you're a fan of the car or an 8-year-old boy, or maybe both, I'm sure this absolutely does it for you.
Now you might be thinking because this is a 20-year-old Ferrari that it's going to be mechanically unreliable and cost you an absolute fortune to maintain. Well, that is actually true. Well, not completely true.
And now to what the 360 is all about, driving it. Surely there's no negatives, right? Maybe? So look, we've all done this. You're flicking through the used car classifieds and you stumble upon a Ferrari 360 and you think, bloody hell, that thing offers all of the supercar appeal just with a pretty huge discount. But then you think, hang on, we're talking about a 25-year-old Ferrari here. Surely that equates to a world of endless issues and problems, all resulting in financial ruin, right? Well, guess what? That's what we're here to find out. Is the 360 the bargain Ferrari that you should snap up right now, or are these things to be avoided at all costs? Well, how about we start with the common exterior issues? What goes wrong here? Well, the first thing might be just getting into the thing. See, the door handles can often stretch the cable, and once they stretch to a certain point, they just stop opening the door completely. And to fix it, requires the entire door to be disassembled. Also, pro tip from the owners, when you open it, don't pull the door from the handle because that can snap the cable. Just pop it open and pull it there. Also, and this can be more prevalent in colder climates, but the door locking mechanism, that can fail over time. Also, the whole popping the window up and down thing, because of some of the aging electronics, that can take some time or just completely fail over time. But a quick warning on this, if it doesn't drop down, don't force the door open because that can damage the actual seal and trim or the glass itself. And if it doesn't pop up, okay, hopefully it's just a calibration issue. That's pretty easy to fix, but if it doesn't pop up at all, just pray it doesn't rain. Actually, just on the topic of water leaking into the car, with the Spider versions, please don't think that's like a Mazda MX-5, that when the roof's up, the whole car is watertight, because the Ferrari generally isn't. Owners mentioned that, look, in light rain, you shouldn't have a problem with any water leaking into the Spider, but in really heavy rain, or even if you're washing the car thoroughly, yeah, expect a bit of water to get in. Also, the roof mechanism is super complex with multiple motors and components that can all have issues, and the repairs can be a nightmare. Look, unless for whatever reason you are absolutely fixated with the Spider, or you're planning on never driving it in the rain, or maybe you're just a sadomasochist, we'd be avoiding the drop top. Now, it's important to understand that with a flat plane crank V8 and pretty firm engine mounts, these things can feel alive all the time because they vibrate like a massage chair. But when you combine that with Australian road and climate conditions, just know that this can also equate to things just rattling themselves loose. For example, the mirrors, these things can rattle themselves loose over time. Now, you can retighten it over and over again, but at some point, they're just not going to tighten anymore. Replacement used ones range from $750 to about $2,000. If you want brand new replacements from Ferrari, you don't want to know how much they are. And then the headlights, especially on the earlier models. Let's say you need to repaint the inside because it's faded over time, or maybe some bugs have accumulated, or maybe condensation is accumulating in there, or maybe some damage has occurred to the actual lens itself. Actually getting this thing apart to fix it is near impossible because it was never really designed to split apart in the first place. So therefore you might think, oh, well, I'll just buy a whole new headlight assembly and be done with it. Well, first of all, you've got to color match it to the car and make sure you've got the right side. You also might be replacing the headlight because the level of adjuster has stuffed up. That's another common problem. But the major issue here is the cost. Just say you would get a used one that hasn't been refurbished, you can be looking at about $3,000. But if you want a factory fresh one from Ferrari with fitting and calibration, some owners have been quoted in excess of $10,000 per headlight. But there could be good news on this. Check the owners groups and forums, because owners out there have managed to fix a lot of the headlight issues thanks to 3D printing or just repurposing used parts. Great source of information. Okay, now crash damage is a major concern with these things, because you've got to remember, pretty much all the exterior panels are aluminium. That makes them really difficult to fix in the first place. Also, this is all one piece. So if there's accident damage here, trying to repair just this part and getting the panel gaps to match up, let alone getting all the paint to match across the car, honestly, it's near impossible. Even when it comes to the front of the car, this is all one piece of aluminium. So if you have some damage on the front three-quarter, that's going to be a bloody nightmare. Now, while aluminium can be a nightmare to repair, the good news is it won't rust although it can corrode. So make sure you check anywhere where water can gather. So down here in the intakes, along the bottom of the doors, near the side skirts. Just check for any paint bubbling up, anything like that. Next up, thanks to the ride height of the car and the angle that the wheel takes when you're turning on full lock, if the suspension compresses, like if you're going up an incline, it can catch on this inner guard and do exactly this and start to roll the guard out. Good news is, fixing this, pretty simple. Now, it's safe to assume that on right-hand drive models, you're gonna see a bit of paint missing just here at the back edge of the bonnet, and it's because the windscreen wiper smacks into it. It seems that Ferrari just didn't care about the right-hand drive market and they didn't calibrate this correctly. Expect that to happen. The other thing with the wipers as well, and this is the same on so many cars, so many manufacturers try to charge ridiculous amounts of money for replacement wiper blades. Plus, often they don't do a great job at wiping. You know what? Wipertech can solve all of these issues. Simply hit the link below to get 15% off and free express shipping on honestly some of the best wiper blades we've ever used. They're so easy to order online. They're going to be delivered to your door. They're super simple to fit and they're going to wipe perfectly. However, if you want a set of Wipertech blades for free, all you've got to do is what Shane did with this Ferrari and lend us your car to film. And if you lend it to us when we feature it, you're going to get a set for free. Hey Shane, you're a bloody legend. Thank you. Also, while we're on thank yous, a huge thank you to all of the Ferrari owners groups and forum members and technicians that helped us research this video. If you've got one of these or you're buying one of these, please join an owners group or a forum because their advice and knowledge is just priceless. Now, if you are in the market for one of these, originality is so critical in terms of retaining value here. The problem that we've seen is that some sellers will claim certain features and options have been fitted from the factory when they never were. We're talking about things like the front and rear challenge style grills and especially the Scuderia style badge. If it's just a sticker stuck on there, that's not factory fitted. The actual factory ones are an enamel badge and they're recessed into the body panel. Also, if the car is fitted with aftermarket wheels, just make sure they're quality items like BBS and also make sure that the factory wheels or the optional wheels also come with the sale. If not, why not? Also, pro tip here, cheap aftermarket wheels can not only completely ruin the overall aesthetic of the car, but it can give you the impression that maybe that owner has cut some costs elsewhere. Now, the actual spec of the car can make a huge difference in terms of its value. For example, manual transmission models often fetch $20,000 to $80,000 more than their F1 auto counterparts. And this pricing difference might actually increase over time as manual transmissions in performance cars become rarer. Also, while red and yellow Ferraris used to be the most desirable models, it seems like the market is shifting a little bit towards the more subtle and sophisticated hues like the silvers, the blacks, and even the metallic blues. Also, try to find a model that has at least some of the really rare factory options because that can generally increase the price and value of the car as well. Also, on the topic of pushing the prices north, if you're, let's say, financially very abundant and also very, very patient and consider yourself a true tifosi, maybe the stripped out race car for the road challenge Stradale might be the 360 for you. The problem, however, aside from them rarely appearing on the used car market, is that you're probably going to have to part with over $500,000 to get behind the wheel. Now, if that's just a smidge too much for your bank account, if you're looking at a manual example of a Modena or a Spider, they're currently ranging in price from about $160,000 to $280,000. And if that's still too much, the automatic versions, they range from about $140,000 to $220,000-ish. However, we could have some good news here because these things are widely speculated to be the next future classic Ferrari. Check out the predecessor 355. Those prices are going through the roof at the moment. So this might be one of those situations where you might want to get in toot sweet. Although, and look, you might disagree with me here, but where a 355 is just utterly beautiful to look at, the 360, yeah, I don't know. Look, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of theatre going on here, and if you're a fan of the car or an 8-year-old boy, or maybe both, I'm sure this absolutely does it for you. Also, I think with time, these are going to become retro cool. I just don't think we're there yet. The Challenge Stradale, with its more aggressive bodywork and lowered ride height and those stunning BBS style rims, is far more visually appealing. But even then, my personal reaction to that car is like, hey, cool, not like, oh my God, look at it. Actually, fun fact on the Challenge Stradale, that was actually the first Ferrari that I ever drove. You hate me even more now, don't you? Also, what was it like to drive? We'll get to that when we drive this. Also, is it just me, or do you think the coolest Ferraris aren't red or yellow? These things in that silvery blue color, I think it's called like Grigio alloy. that thing looks the business. It's still not my favorite Ferrari to look at, but that color improves things. Now, before we get into the interior and its potential common issues, we totally understand that this video might give you the impression that the 360 is just always going to be a bag of bolts waiting to fall apart at any moment, but that is simply not the case. See, we read countless comments from owners proclaiming faultless ownership experiences, and it's really important to recognize that Ferrari constantly improved the 360 all the way through its production cycle. But if critical maintenance has been missed or the car has been mistreated in any way, look, we're not talking Lexus LC500 levels of resilience here. These things, they can be fragile. For example, let's talk about the leather in here. First of all, it feels beautiful, super high quality. Even after 25 years, it still smells amazing. However, especially in hot climates like Australia, the leather has been known to shrink. Owners have often seen the plastic surrounds for the demisting vents at the base of the windscreen popping out because as the leather shrinks, it kind of forces it out of place. Also, the line of stitching across the bottom edge of the windscreen, chances are that won't be a straight line anymore. Also, you can just expect some wrinkles and inconsistencies across the top of the dash. And the passenger side airbag cover, it can also get wrinkly. And on the seats, plenty of owners have had to get these reupholstered because it just pulls and gathers and looks a bit shit. Also, while we're on the seats, the bolsters on the entry sides, look, they're pretty aggressive and the car's quite low and the doors are big, so getting in and out can be a challenge. So expect the bolsters to be a bit overly squidgy, or even the leather can mark pretty easily. However, I've got to say, in this car, like, it's pushing 90,000 kilometers, it's like 25 years old, the leather is in great shape and just the overall interior resilience, really bloody good. Oh, also in the seats, there were a few options. If you can, try to find an example fitted with the Daytona style seats. They've got sort of the round metal holes in them, or the one-piece carbon fiber racing style seat. Cars with those seats will often ask a bit of a premium, but they'll also retain their value in the long term. Now, this next issue is super common across these, but the vents around the air conditioning, the buttons, the door pulls, pretty much anything you touch can de-vulcanize. What that means is that the sort of almost soft touch texture starts to wear away and everything feels very sticky, a bit like me. And annoyingly, this sticky texture in here, not only is it gross to touch, but it seems to just attract dust and dirt and grime, so it's constantly just feeling dirty. Now, there are plenty of solutions to this. Even with this car, it has been sorted out, but please, like this car, get it done properly. Be prepared, that is going to cost a lot of money. Some owners have reported in excess of $10,000 because it is a massive, massive job, but get it done. But the owner's hot tip here is don't take this stuff to Ferrari to get it sorted unless you're happy to hemorrhage way more money than that. Now, the 360 was one of the very first Ferraris that allowed you to specify things like different colored stitching and a whole bunch of different surface textures. But just be aware that how the car is specified can have a hell of an impact on what they're asking on the used market and their ability to retain value. But just know that some of the interior surfaces, like this one here, it's known to scratch pretty easily and it can mark and look dirty in no time. But even on examples that have the gloss carbon fiber trim, like the Challenge Stradale, the clear coat on that is known to scratch really easily. That obviously can be rejuvenated with a proper detail, but just be aware. This, however, yeah, it does require some special cleaning techniques. You can't just repaint that because it's not just silver paint, it's textured. Next up, before you buy one of these, try to get it into a dark location and make sure that all of the lighting for the gauge cluster works on all of the dials. The problem here is if one of them is out, you actually have to get the entire circuit board for the entire gauge cluster repaired, and that can cost a bloody fortune. Now look, to make life easy for you, we've listed all of the common problems and a whole bunch of other stuff on the free Ferrari 360 cheat sheet over at ReDriven.com. Hit the link below. If you're in the market for one of these, it's an absolute must read. But look, aside from the common issues in here, this interior, I feel like it's a bit like the exterior. It doesn't blow your mind, but it is just, it's a nice place to be. Visually, yeah, it's cool, it's nice, it's got theatre to it. Also, like the exterior, I feel like this interior design will age really gracefully with time. This will become retro cool, but the eagle-eyed of you will have noticed that this interior features something that makes this a true Ferrari, and it's this, the gated manual transmission. Now look, if you've got a medical or a mobility issue and you simply cannot drive a manual, obviously you'd buy the auto. But if you are able-bodied and you just are looking at buying an auto because you're too lazy and haven't bothered to learn how to drive a manual, what the hell are you doing? it's got to be one of these over the paddle shift. But now that I've offended many of you, no matter if it's a manual or an automatic, being a right-hand drive car, there are some interesting ergonomic quirks in here. For example, you sit slightly offset, so the pedals are quite far to the left of where the steering wheel is. Also, I have quite large feet. And I'm glad I'm wearing my smallest shoes, because even with these, I'm grabbing on the inside edge of the brake pedal. Now, why are there some interesting weird quirks with the right-hand drive cars? It's because at the time with Ferrari, right-hand drive only made up for less than 10% of their overall sales. So why would they bother spending huge amounts of money to re-engineer the car for such a small market? It does make sense, but it's just, I don't know, I'm going to say it all adds to the charm of the car. But look, in regards to the overall seating position, I'm exactly 14 centimetres taller than Ferrari Formula One driver Lewis Hamilton. I still find it weird to say that, Ferrari Formula One driver Lewis Hamilton. It's not sitting right yet, but we'll get there. But look, I hate to say this, I can't get comfortable. Like the seats are good, and the seating position, as I said, a little bit quirky, but I wish the steering wheel came back a little bit further. I actually wish I could sit a little bit lower as well. It's not a bad sitting position. I think I was just expecting more. I think I felt like it would feel like driving a racing car. Maybe the one-piece carbon fiber seats out of the Challenge Stradale would be better, because I remember in that car it felt amazing to sit in. This one, not quite as much. Now, as far as living with this interior in terms of practicality, you've got a pretty small little glove box there. You've got a power outlet here and a spot for coins. You've actually got a spot that's pretty well designed to hold your phone just there. That's pretty handy. Got door bins, but they're really only for things that have 2 dimensions. You've also got actually a pretty decent amount of space behind the seats, as well as a net that is specifically designed to hold one of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time. And I think that's about it for practicality. Not amazing, but of course not, because it's a Ferrari. Just another thing with this interior and being in it, I don't know what the temperature insulation is like in here, but I tell you what, I'm melting. It's not that hot outside, but in the car, it feels like it's about 50 degrees. Now, being a 2-seater supercar from 25 years ago, understandably, it's not exactly loaded to the hilt with safety features and equipment and technology. Look, you will find a couple of airbags, traction control, ABS, climate control, and remote central locking as standard, but the standard stereo just features 2 speakers. The factory sat-nav, if it's optioned, is truly terrible, and obviously you can forget about any sort of phone connectivity or even a rear view camera. However, retrofitting that stuff these days is an absolute breeze. There are systems out there that allow you to retain the original head unit, and it hides the phone connectivity stuff either under the seats or elsewhere in the cabin, or you could do the complete opposite end of that and have like an actual touch screen here kind of sticking out from the dash, and that'll have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and you can fit a reversing camera, and that'll work perfectly too. Now, the hot tip here is to check out our mates at Automotive Superstore, because not only will they have all your infotainment solutions as well as replacement speakers, rear view cameras, they'll also have things like parking sensors, dash cams, performance parts, off-roading parts, driving lights. They have over 400,000 different parts and accessories, so chances are, no matter what you need, they're going to have it. Plus, make sure that you're getting exactly the right part for your car. All you've got to do is just type in your rego onto the website, and it will filter down to all the parts that will suit best, and they'll ship straight to your door, so you can do shopping without having to deal with parking and traffic and all that sort of stuff. Honestly, check them out via the link below. You're gonna love them as much as we do. Now, as far as practicality in the front boot goes, actually pretty bloody good. However, make sure that the car comes with its toolkit and tyre inflator, because again, a Ferrari as factory fresh as possible is ideal. Also, try to find one that has the matching Ferrari luggage set as well, because that will retain its value. And now to what the 360 is all about, driving it. Surely there's no negatives, right? Maybe? Firstly, it's really important to understand that tyre choice and suspension calibration in terms of wheel alignment is critical with these things. Actually, this can be a bit of a Ferrari and Lamborghini trait. The wrong set of tyres and the wrong wheel alignment settings can make the car incredibly underwhelming all the way through to just massively disappointing. Now, as I mentioned, the first Ferrari I drove was a Challenge Stradale, and between you and I, honestly, on public roads, it was honestly a bit sketchy, almost leaning into being a nightmare on anything but the absolute smoothest roads. But this one, however, a standard 360, it seems to solve all of those issues. Don't get me wrong, it is still a very firm riding car, but it doesn't feel sketchy on normal roads like the Challenge does. Plus, the power and just overall dynamics in here for the real world, fantastic. Look, modern Ferraris and Lamborghinis and McLarens, they're all massively faster than this thing, but I honestly think this is more fun more of the time. And you know why? It's this. Oh my God, it's the sound and feeling of a naturally aspirated Ferrari V8 with this clicking and just the tactility of this gated manual shift. It's so good. Also with the newer supercars out there, I just think they've become both too easy and too fast to drive. With this, it demands you to work on your driving skills. You have to learn the car, and when you do that, you kind of fall in love with it even more. With the newer ones, they're just devices to get you to your destination as fast as possible. With this, it's like it's encouraging you just to enjoy the trip. But then when you're not giving it the beans, just around town in the real world, this is like the perfect Ferrari blend. It sort of has all the charm and character and romance of earlier Ferraris, but with just enough modernity to make it usable every day of the week. However, as utterly intoxicating as this car is to drive when it's at its best, what about when it's not? Because what are the mechanical concerns here? Unfortunately, I can't elaborate on that because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But you know who is? It's Jim. Just let me get back to driving this thing.
Yes, they are 20 years old, which means everything made of plastic or rubber is likely to be on its way out, so that is something you're going to have to look out for. Even if they haven't really been driven much, definitely something to look out for. Some of these engines do leak oil. Now, even if they've been driven or not, they're still going to leak oil. In fact, the ones that have been driven more are less likely to leak oil, so that's a good reason to get out and drive it, actually. One of the common failure points we see in these is the fuel pumps. Now, there's 2 fuel tanks and there's 2 fuel pumps. They are both known to fail. A lot of people say because the cars don't get driven much, those pumps just sit idly in those tanks and they just get all rusty and corroded, which is true. Again, another reason to get out and drive it. Some of the earlier ones, the 99 and 2000 models, they had an issue with their camshaft variator. That's basically the gear, the variable camshaft timing gear on the exhaust cam. There was a recall, and a lot of those were replaced back in the day. But just be careful, if you've got one that's got 0 miles on it, it might not have been changed. So just check with Ferrari to make sure that actually has been done. Some of those early models also had an issue with their timing belt tensioner. Again, that's most likely, it's probably been fixed by now. And reality is the timing belt on these is due every 3 years, whether you drive it or not. So it's likely to have been fixed. If you have one of these or are buying one of these, you just make sure that timing belt has been done. If they break, it's a catastrophic engine failure. So every 3 years for a timing belt. The good news here with the timing belts is there are covers behind the seats for access, and you can actually do these timing belts with the engine still in the car, unlike some earlier Ferrari models where you had to drop the engine and the whole subframe to do it. In these, actually pretty easy. Another common problem which you can have is the exhaust manifolds can crack and leak. When they're cold on startup, you can sometimes hear a chuffing noise, and sometimes you can't hear it when they heat up because the cracks all close up. The thing here is most people just put an aftermarket exhaust on it anyway, so just do that because they sound way better. The inlet manifold can also be problematic. That's got a whole bunch of variable runner components in there and a whole bunch of linkages. The bushes in those linkages can wear and they can rattle terribly, and it can sound like the top end of the engine is about to leave the chat, basically. The good news here is relatively easy to diagnose. You can just grab hold of those linkages and the noise stops. And all of that is actually rebuildable too. So comparatively pretty easy fix. The engine mounts in these, look, they are working pretty hard with these engines. If they've never been done, they are well and truly due. Remember, they're 20 years old. Another common problem owners see with these is they can blow a lot of smoke. The problem here is some people overfill the oil tank. They're a dry sump system, and the breather goes straight into the inlet manifold. So if you overfill the oil, it gets sucked into the engine and just sits there in the manifold basically, and just when you give it the beans, it sucks the oil in and blows a ton of smoke. The trick here is just check the oil when it is at operating temperature and on perfectly flat ground, and just do not overfill it. Now, the transmissions in these, that's what everybody talks about with these. There's manuals and there's the automated manual, which they call the F1. It's actually pretty much the same transmission, it's just that the F1 is hydraulically actuated. Most of these on the used market are actually automatics, but you have to look out for a few things here. The hydraulic pump and actuator, they can leak and fail sometimes, something to look out for. Now the hydraulic pump, when it fails, it's often not the pump that kills it, the relay that switches that pump on and off. That relay can fail and that just runs the pump continuously, which it's not designed to do, and subsequently the pump just burns out and fails. The good news here is that pump is actually used on a few other Alpha models as well, so you don't have to buy the genuine Ferrari pump, a little bit cheaper then. Another known issue with these is the transmission oil cooler. Sometimes they leak internally. Now, if you're getting oil in the cooling system, that's not so bad, but if you're getting coolant in these transmissions, that can cause serious transmission damage. So if you're losing coolant and you can't see where it's going, just have a good look at the transmission. You need to stop that before it fails. The F1 is sometimes criticised for premature clutch wear. Now, Ferrari say if it's adjusted right, the PIS setting, which is basically the friction point, if it's not right, it can wear the clutch prematurely. They reckon 20 to 30,000 kilometres is actually pretty good for these. Not very good compared to just about every other car, but in these, that's considered a good life. Now, just on that friction point, it is adjustable within a proper scan tool, as is there's a clutch wear index as well, which basically tells you how much of the clutch is remaining, although some criticise it for not being accurate. But if you're looking to buy one, it's good to know how much life is left in that clutch. But having said that, if you're looking to buy one, look, just do Ferrari proud and just get a manual one. Just spend the money, just do it. Another common issue on these, people drive them on rough roads and they hear all sorts of clunks and bangs and rattles. All the suspension mountings on these are a version of a spherical bearing. There's not a lot of insulation on these and they rattle and they wear out. Typically, they're not unsafe when they're rattling. It just only takes the slightest wear before they start rattling. They're noisy and annoying and they're expensive to change as well, so it's something you will probably have to change. Look, overall, mechanically speaking, the hot tip here is just buy one that's actually been driven. Vehicles that have been stored for years and not driven, all the oil seals will be rock hard. There'll be problems with the cooling system. Just get one that's been out and been driven. Now, another thing to be careful of mechanically speaking, there was a time when these were actually really cheap. Now, sometimes they were bought by people that may not have been able to afford proper maintenance. So if you're looking at one, just make sure that it has got a really well documented maintenance and service history.
But we might run into another issue here, and this might be specific to Australia and our stupid tall poppy syndrome, but driving one of these can potentially make you quite unpopular on the road. You can expect endless tailgaters, chances are drivers will cut you off everywhere, and no one is going to let you change lanes. Even this morning, I pulled up at a set of lights and the lady next to me just like rolled her eyes and mouthed wanker. Also, I sent a bunch of my female mates photos of the car we're filming today, and to say their responses were brutal would be a hell of an understatement. Look, it's pretty much safe to say that if you're trying to attract the opposite sex, a Ferrari probably isn't the way to go. But look, if you're happy to overlook some of the potential negative stereotypes with a Ferrari, well, first of all, well done for you. And secondly, yeah, why not buy one? Maybe. A meticulous maintenance history is essential, as is finding one as close to factory spec as possible. A later model example, regularly driven by a mature and passionate enthusiast, is ideal. And examples fitting this criteria will often cost more, but spending more upfront could save you thousands in repairs later. However, it is important to recognise that for what these are currently asking on the used market, there's a whole bunch of other cars out there that offer pretty much the same thrills with far fewer headaches. For example, the Lotus Exige Sport 420 or Emira delivers all that racing pedigree and brand appeal and immense capability, while their Toyota-sourced engines provide near bulletproof reliability. A Porsche 911 covers many of the same bases, though, yeah, okay, it might lack the Ferrari's theatre. However, a Cayman or a 718 GT4 offer 360-like driving experiences, but just turned up to 11. However, we are talking, supercar looks and image here, so surely one of these with 10 cylinders trumps one of these with 8, right? And look, I know it's a tough decision between these two, but which would you buy? For me personally, for this sort of money, I think I'd get a new M3 Touring and an MX-5. That's kind of the perfect garage, but what would you get? Let us know in the comments below. See you next time. Now the 360, I sound like Mickey Mouse.